Hello, and welcome to my show, Inner Work for Greater Good. It's so nice to have you. This is a very exciting day. I know, the first day of recording all these wonderful shows. My name is Emily Eldridge. I am the founder and CEO of ChangeLight, Inner Work for Greater Good, hence the name of the show. And I'm also the creator of the ChangeLight system, which is a system that transforms your struggles, focuses your strengths, and accelerates your power to change the world. So what does that really mean? Well, for one thing, the people with whom I mostly work are what are called change makers. You may be familiar with that term, or you may not. So in some circles, it's defined as someone who takes creative action to solve a social problem. So for example, a social entrepreneur, someone who invents something to help, the environment, or to help people in developing countries, get light or get power, or, sanitize their water. But it can also be philanthropists, people who put their money towards making a difference, conscious capitalists, impacts investors. But anyway, I personally, though, I mean, that's a sort of particular definition of change makers. But I would say that actually a change maker is someone who is driven to make a positive difference in the world, to change the world for the better. And I would argue that probably all of us are change makers in some level, and definitely Paula Fellingham is, because of course she has this vision of bringing women together in this wonderful format so that we can all be connect, and we can learn from each other, and really to help empower women all over the world, and to do it in such an innovative and unique way. Hello, Paula Fellingham, wonderful change maker. I, of course, am a change maker too. I've always been extremely driven to make a difference in the world. And the work, the ChangeLight system that I teach, is actually a system that I developed myself out of my own inner struggles as a change maker, and in being able to make the difference that I've always had this vision of making. So basically, my mission is that by teaching change makers how to do their inner work for greater good, my mission is to accelerate the healing of humanity and our planet. And the way I do that, oh, here we go. Now we got to get into there. So, well, actually, this is the homepage of my website. You can see, here I am. And I think of ChangeLight as a light in the dark for change makers. And I'm going to get into, in the show, I'm really going to talk about the importance of inner work for greater good, and what I really mean by inner work, and the kind of inner work that I teach, so that you have a baseline understanding of what I do, but also how you can apply this to your own life. And then, of course, as the show's going forward, we're going to go deeper into that and really learn more, and I'll share more about this work. But as you can see, I've been very blessed. I've gotten to speak in some amazing places to change makers. So Nexus is actually an organization for philanthropists and social entrepreneurs to come together. And I've done a couple of TEDx's, and I've spoken at the UN and Parliament. It's pretty cool. So I've gotten to work a lot with, especially young change makers around the world who, so many of them come from developing countries where they don't have even remotely the opportunities that we have, like here in the United States. And yet they work with what they've got to make a difference. So honestly, I love change makers because they inspire me so much. And so I really feel very honored to be able to bring this work to the world, and especially to help change makers. So the way I do this actually is, this is the community that I created, and actually, I will tell you, launched it yesterday in preparation for this, because this has been a vision that I've had of creating a community for change makers where they can, feel safe and supported in doing their inner work for greater good. So I have an online community. I also have a course, the ChangeLight system. And so in this show, I'm talking to women change makers. And here's why I think it's so important to speak to women change makers, just because I actually see that women change makers are some of the most extraordinary and powerful change makers on our planet. At the same time, though, and we could, this is a whole other topic of conversation, of course, is, patriarchal societies and male dominance and all that kind of stuff, is that women have often been treated, obviously, as less than. We've been diminished for our unique gifts, or our intuition, or our emotional skills, or things like that. But at the same time, women are so community minded typically. And I realize I'm making, blanket statement about women. We're all different. But in general, I find that women are not so much about competition as we are about collaboration. And that's one of my missions as well, is even in the world of change making, even in the world of, for example, nonprofits, there's actually a lot of competition. And it's really too bad, because it's kind of crazy to be competing for resources in that environment when everyone's really trying to make a difference. And so I would just say that sort of one of the subtexts of my mission is really to bring change makers together more as well, so that we can really work together to solve problems. And that women really have, I think, especially that capacity. Nothing against men. I love men. I have wonderful men in my life, but I just think it's really, we have a special opportunity to be able to do that. Obviously, Win-Win Women TV is an example of that as well. So change makers have what I call mission ambition. So it's this mission that's, it means that you are ambitious, not just for yourself, but for the mission you are here to serve. And so there's often among change makers, again, I include myself, and I'm going to share more of my own story about that, but there's this focus on everyone else and everything else, and trying to be out there and make a difference and really, have an impact. But what often happens is that we, those of us who are so focused, outwardly focused like that, on wanting to make a difference and change the world, the problem with that is that oftentimes we fail to neglect ourselves. We fail to pay attention to when it is that we need saving too. Like when we're so busy saving the world, we fail to realize when we need saving too, when we need help too. It's something that I've seen in change makers around the world, where it's this constant focus on, well, everybody else has, their needs are more important than mine. But I tell you what, that balance is what is key, and really valuing oneself in addition to others, and really, paying attention to the fact that it's kind of like that idea of the oxygen mask, right? It's like you've got to put on your own oxygen mask first in order to really make a difference. And the problem, though, is that when change makers don't spend enough time and energy and attention and care on themselves as well as on others, is that's when we end up burned out. That's when we end up making big, unconscious, unintentional mistakes. That's when we end up, as I often say, leading from our wounds and not as much from our wisdom. And that's where there's all this subconscious stuff. And I'm going to talk about what's really going on there. By the way, I'm hearing some sound in the background. I don't know if somebody isn't muted. So anyway, I don't know if that's me or someone else, but if you could mute, that would be great. So anyway, the point is that I just want to make sure I'm recording. Am I recording? Okay, good. So anyway, the point is that if we don't pay enough attention to ourselves and we don't address what's going on within, then oftentimes we can end up sabotaging our efforts. We can end up sabotaging our relationships. We can really, it can really wreak havoc on our lives when, as much as we may be making a positive difference in the world, and I see this all the time, it's like people who the world sees them as, wow, they're so, successful and they're making such a difference, or they're head of this NGO, or they're, this like famous social entrepreneur having an impact. And then you find out that, well, actually privately, their private life is a mess. Their wife or their husband doesn't speak to them, their kids, it's a problem. And so that's where there really needs to be this balance. And not only that, as I often say, when we light up the world. And so I feel very passionate that change makers, those of us who are working so hard to make a difference in the world, we've got to do it from a place of health. We've got to do it from a place of inner peace. As I often say, inner peace is inner power. And so that's my intention, is helping change makers be the most powerful and most impactful human beings that they can be, so that they inspire people, so that we inspire people, not just by what we do, but by who we are. I mean, think about people who you meet where they just radiate this light. There's just something about them. They're so self-possessed. They're so confident, and that those people can have it, make a difference even just by walking in a room. So it's stuff like that, but it's also about how we react to situations. And so I find that by doing the inner work is how we can heal those triggers, those blocks, those wounds, those inner saboteurs that get in the way of us truly having the ultimate impact that we're here to have and that we know we can have. So that's my intention. There's this wonderful quote by Marianne Williamson. Oh, actually, see, I've got all these like wonderful little things that I forgot that I put on my PowerPoint. So yes, this is oftentimes what's going on inside of change makers, whether they realize it or not. So this quote from Marianne Williamson, I think, is wonderful. Until we have met the monsters in ourselves, we keep trying to slay them in the outer world, and we find that we cannot. For all of the darkness in the world stems from darkness in the heart, and it is there that we must do our work. So again, it's that idea that we, rather than being so wholly outwardly focused, we also need to take some time to go within. Because as I often say as well, is that when you look at humanity and you look at all of the problems that we have, whether it's with the environment or whether it's, societal strife or, abuse and things like that, it stems from within. That's not to say that you or I are personally responsible for the wounds of the world, but the world is wounded and humanity is wounded because we are wounded. Those are the roots of our problems. But when you heal humanity, you help heal the planet. So that's what this is about. So really, if you want to make a change in the world, I always say it is absolutely vital that you do that inner work, so that you can have a greater impact, so that you can achieve greater good in the world, and even more effortlessly than if you don't do that inner work. There's another wonderful quote that I love by Brene Brown. Only when we are brave enough to explore the darkness will we discover the infinite power of our light. So I'll just briefly tell you about my story as a change maker, just so you know where this is coming from, because what I'm going to share with you is basically that I'm, as I mentioned, I'm a change maker, and over the years I have had so many emotional struggles for a lot of different reasons, and but I've always known that I've had this purpose to serve. I just have this strong drive and passion, and this knowing that I was going to play a role and have a big impact in the world, a big positive impact in the world, and yet for decades I was so stifled by my own fears, by my own blocks, by triggers, by wounds, by insecurities, by all these other things that often affect women change makers, men change makers as well, but especially women, I think, and that hold us back. And so I was completely riddled with all of these insecurities, and really, and I mean, to the point where really I got to the point, well, let me just share this with you. So this is a picture of me in India. I was doing a lot over the years, I should say. I was volunteering in India. That was at Amarjyoti, which is a wonderful school for handicapped kids. And this bottom photo is me at Ground Zero. So I was living in New York when the Trade Center was hit, and so I ran down to help, and then I ended up getting involved with a community center. So the point is, I've done things to try to help, and yet all this while I was still struggling with trying to figure out, what is my purpose? Who am I here to be? I know I'm here to do something, but what is it, and how do I get there? And then this final photo is a picture of me and my husband and me. And he and I met. I actually sharing this picture because he and I met when I was in Los Angeles back in the early 2000s, late 90s and 2000s, and I was volunteering at Shriners Hospital for children. And he had been a patient there since he was 2. He was born without legs, and he has 6 fingers. And he's my buddy. He's my best friend, and he helps me with ChangeLight. So in all of that volunteer work, it's kind of cool. I mean, I got a husband out of it. but the point is, though, that I was really still struggling for a long time. And then he and I actually didn't even reconnect until like 2009. So it was kind of an interesting journey there. But in between that time, frankly, I really did struggle with a lot of self-loathing and depression, and really just trying to figure out what the heck I was supposed to do with my life, and shaming myself a lot for not having figured it out. And then meanwhile, of course, having insecurities that I did, developed throughout my childhood. And so what happened was, that I actually in 2009, I hit rock bottom, and I was so deeply, everything in my life fell apart. I really, right before that, I thought things were going great. And I really thought I was finally creating the thing that I was supposed to do. And of course, I met the guy who I thought was the one, sort of classic, right? Anyway, the point is, it all fell apart, and I was destroyed. I fell into a deep, dark night of the soul. I lost all sense of faith, all sense of faith in myself, faith in others, faith in the world. Whenever I thought about, when someone asked me like, well, what is it that brings you joy? Honestly, all I just saw was darkness. I could not envision a future for myself. I was that self-loathing and depressed. Long story shorter, during that time, without going into too many details, because of course I only have so much time here, But during that time is when I was in such a deep, dark place. It's interesting how it was such a blessing, because basically I couldn't get away from my own inner darkness. And because I couldn't get away from it, I had to face it. And by facing what was going on inside of me, I learned the truth about not just what was going on inside of me, but also these more universal things, what's going on inside of everyone, certain aspects of the self. And I started to learn like these parts of me that were causing me to be self-hating, the parts of me that were causing me to criticize myself, the parts of me that made me feel blocked or triggered by certain situations. All of a sudden I'd get really angry if something happened, or, that wanted to control things that were out of my control. So it forced me to really see the truth about what was going on inside. And it was out of that journey that I ended up creating a technique that permanently heals those parts, like that inner critic that isn't, we have actually multiple inner critics, but I can heal an inner critic in like 2 to 3 hours. And it's actually not that hard. That may seem like people, oftentimes when I say that, they're like, yeah, whatever. I'm like, no, actually, it's not that hard when you know why that inner critic, for example, is there, why it exists, what it's trying to do, and what it needs in order to heal. And so that it was by learning that and developing the technique, and I'll tell you a little bit about the technique, but it was by developing that technique that I ended up discovering even more. So it's like Brene Brown said in her quote, when we face our inner darkness, that's how we discover the infinite power of our light. Because what I ultimately discovered is that what we see as wrong or bad or weak or dark about us or flawed about us is simply our light in disguise. It's our light that's been distorted by experiences that we've had in our lives. And so that's what I discovered for myself, is that all those parts of me that were, really causing me so many problems, it turns out they were just parts of my power that were stuck in struggle and strife. And all I had to do was learn how to actually transform them back to their original essences, so that rather than get in the way, they could support me. So I want to share with you right now the ChangeLight, the basics of the ChangeLight system, and the basics of, the techniques that I teach, and really the elements that I teach. Because what I find is that a lot of times we are so misled by what's really going on inside of us. We are so many people don't accurately understand. It's not their fault, it's because of society and parenting and things like that. But a lot of times people don't accurately understand what's really going on inside of them. And so let's see, I've got 11 minutes left, so I'm going to try to go through this. But so these are the basic aspects of the ChangeLight system. I'm going to introduce you to 4 concepts, and that is, and this is all the things I've discovered through my work and, inner work within myself and others. So first of all, you have a truth, and these are parts within you, okay, within all of us. So most people would understand, you have a truth, and I'm going to break this down in a minute. You have a truth. You have what I call your inner guiding star. You have your 3 M powers or empower types. And then finally, you have inner X powers. And I'm going to go through these one at a time. So when it comes to your truth, this is a really common term that people use, right? I got to trust my truth, or listen to my truth and follow my truth, or what does your truth tell you? And it's really commonly used, but I thought, well, how would you define your truth? So as I thought about it, I realized that your truth is the presence within you that knows who you are and who you are here to be. So it's your true self beyond all influence and fear, but it's also your inner compass. It guides you to be and to become your optimal self. So I think of it as like, it's like this feeling inside that's there, and it's always there. It never wavers, it never changes, it never dims. We all have a truth. I have my own truth, you have your own truth. And my truth is for me to live, and your truth is for you to live. And that's our job. That's how I see it. But the key is, how do you live it, right? How do you access it? And what are the parts that support us in doing that? And that's what we're going to talk about next. Your guiding star. Your guiding star, at the same time, so you have your truth, but then your guiding star is the vision you carry inside of you as your optimal self. So your guiding star embodies who you are, how you feel, and what you do when you are fully living your truth. So your guiding star inspires and guides you to be and to become your optimal self. So here's how I describe this. Your truth is like that knowing, that just that inner compass, that feeling that God, you can feel whether something's in alignment with your truth or not. But your guiding star is that image of like, oh, that's what I look like when I am fully living my truth. Oh, that's how I react to situations. Oh, that's the kind of energy I radiate. That's the kind of presence in the world. Those are some of the things that I do. So your guiding star is this wonderful, like, it's you living your truth. And I'll tell you a little anecdote about your guiding star, at least from my experience, is that my guiding star, I told you I was in that really deep depressed state. It wasn't until years later, well after I'd clawed my way out of that depression, that I realized that the thing, if you will, that was keeping me so determined and committed to getting out of that depression and being a brighter light in the world was my guiding star. I saw her and I didn't even realize it at the time, but she was there. And so that's why, even if you may not be fully aware of your own inner guiding star, he or she or they are there. They're there and they are guiding you in whatever ways they can, whether it's subconsciously or consciously. So that's another element. You've got your truth, you've got your guiding star, and then you have these three wonderful things that I call empowers. Your empowers are the parts of you that empower you to live your truth. They enable you to survive, feel alive, and have purpose and drive. You have three empowers. So basically you have one empower, I call it your inner impresario, whose focus is survival, and it has certain gifts and qualities and talents and aptitudes that it helps you to survive. Another one is called your free spirit. So it helps you feel alive. It's basically like your inner child is really joyful and excited and creative and spontaneous. And then the third one is what I call your inner sovereign. And that's the part that enables you to have that sense of purpose and drive. Your sovereign is the one that's it's your conduit for your intuition and for your truth, knowing your truth. So your empowers hold the perfect balance of qualities, talents, and aptitudes that you need in order to fully actualize your truth. So you have your unique balance of them. I have my own unique balance of them. And we have exactly like the blueprint, if you will, like the divine design within us of empowers to support us in living our truth. I often say we are divinely designed to live your truth, and that all of the power you need is within you. But here's the key, here's the thing, here's the little hitch. So X powers, you probably guessed about X powers. So X powers are, well, that's the kind of stuff that gets in the way of us living our truth. So what are X powers? X powers are parts of you that are stuck in chronic states of stress, reactivity, or pain. They are your subconscious, unhealed wounds and defenses. X powers think, feel, and behave according to what they learned from stressful or painful experiences, or that they developed in reaction to them. So X powers are really those parts that obstruct your ability to fully feel at peace and empowered and to actualize your truth. So what does this mean? Well, basically, we're born, we come into this lifetime, and, as kids, usually we're joyful and things are pretty good and we're pretty carefree. But then over time, we have things that happen to us. I mean, we have traumas or we have certain stressors. It doesn't even have to be something so traumatic for it to have a kind of traumatic effect on us. It could be some kid said something on the playground. Well, we can have different X powers that form in response to those experiences. In other words, some people refer to them as blocks, triggers, parts of the ego, parts of the main body, but I call them X powers for two very clear, specific reasons. One, well, because the prefix X means against. So X powers, because they feel like they work against your power. The other reason is because X also means former, like ex-girlfriend, ex-boyfriend. Though they are former parts of your power. So let me just go back here. Empowers. So you have your three empowers. The thing is, as your empowers are impacted by stress or fear or pain or certain circumstances, situations, or what have you, they fragment, parts of them fragment and darken and become X powers. So when I was explaining earlier about basically realizing that all these parts of me that I thought were like shameful parts of me and that were causing me so much pain, and I was fighting them and resisted them and arguing with them and trying to suppress them, when I finally had to face them, I realized, oh my gosh, you mean this part of me is just trying to protect me or take care of me whatever way it knows, but it doesn't know that it's hurting me? That's often the case with X powers, is like, so because in my work, and I'll tell you what the process is that I do, I actually talk to these X powers. So you see how you would take those 3 types of M powers, but then they can get fragmented. And that's when they can become basically like unrecognizable. And we struggle with them because they don't feel good and they cause us to behave ways that we don't like. So this is where I'm going to just quickly give you an intro to the drawing out process. So this is a technique that I referred to before that I created. And it literally is drawing out. In fact, that funny looking scary Muppet dude right there that's the very first monster that I drew out. X power, as I call it now. I don't call them monsters anymore because they're not. But he's the first guy who I drew out. And he's that's the one that actually led me to develop the full drawing out process that, like I said, in 2 or 3 hours can permanently heal an inner wounded. I mean, an inner wound, an inner critic, triggers, blocks, blind spots, things like this. And the way it does it is it by directly accesses your subconscious to heal inner blocks and struggles, reveal your inner wisdom and strengths, and accelerate your ability to achieve your optimum potential. So by drawing out your truth, and when I say drawing out, I mean, it's like a lot of times when we look at our emotions, we tend to analyze our emotions or think about our emotions or try to figure out what's going on with our struggles. Those are very left-brained approaches, right? Left brain is more like analytical and words and, trying to figure things out in language. The thing is, where our subconscious tends to communicate in images and emotions and things like that. So when you literally draw out and just tune in and just let whatever, tune into that struggle, and then just whatever you see, hear, feel, notice, and then literally draw it out. It could be stick figures. It's not about artistry. It could be something silly, you don't have to know how to draw, but you literally put it out in that way. We actually get a lot richer, deeper information from the subconscious than if we just talk about how you're feeling or analyze how you're feeling. And so that's how it does this. And so that's why we can draw out your truth, your guiding star, and your M powers in order to access their wisdom and guidance for you. We can also draw out your X powers so that you can more quickly and painlessly heal them. And in that case, we're dealing with what's at the root of the struggle, not with what you think is at the root. Oh my gosh, I have so many clients where they come to me and they're like, well, I think this is my issue. I went to therapy for 10 years for it. So I think this is what it is. And then we get in there and it's like, they're like, I had no idea that. What? I haven't thought about that in years. That's what's at the core of it. Yes, that's what's at the core of it. And we hear from the horse's mouth, from those X powers, exactly what is going on, why they're there, why they're wreaking havoc in your subconscious, and what they need in order to heal. And so that's what that involves. So that's a quick overview of the ChangeLight system and the work that I do, and this whole idea of doing inner work for greater good. And that the whole purpose of this is we want to heal those darkened parts, right? The X powers that have been distorted by fear and pain and sort of fallen into darkness. And as we heal them, you get so much more light. Then you reclaim the power of your M powers. You can more clearly see your guiding star, and you can more easily tune in to your truth. And your truth, as I often say, is the treasure that we are after. You want your treasure to guide you. You want your truth to guide you through life, because for me, it's all about actualizing your truth. What is your truth telling you? Who is your truth guiding you to become, that guiding star? And how do you actualize it without the distraction and the disruption and all of the inner obstacles of those X powers? So that's what the ChangeLight system is about. That's what inner work for greater good is about, because when you heal the world. As we light up the world. We all have this extraordinary light within us. This is not some like woo-woo concept. This is real. And as we access, look at that darkness, heal that darkness, those X powers, and just like feel that light just feel like it's so fun actually to see people go through the drawing out process and they're like, oh, they're kind of almost like speechless, because it's all that stuff that was stuck in struggle becomes part of their light, their joy, their energy, their power again. And so that's what it is. It's about healing the world from the inside out. And frankly, even if you're not, by definition, a change maker, even if you just sort of want to be a better person, or you want to just kind of like help other people, and you don't have this like driving force to invent some new thing, it's okay. Because the point is, by doing the inner work, you are achieving greater good. Because when you do the inner work, you show up better, you show up more healthy, and people respond to you differently, and you have a lot harmonious life and relationships. So that's that's my presentation. I do have one thing I want to share with you. It's okay. Since I just launched the community, I just want you all to know that for a limited time, it's $100 off of membership in the ChangeLight course and community.changelight.world. I would love for you to be a part of it. We're just getting started, and we've got the courses in there to teach you the ChangeLight system, and my husband's in there as well, and he's been wonderful in helping me to create it. And so it really is all about creating a safe and supportive space where people can do their inner work for greater good. So I hope that you will join us, and I thank you so much for listening.